We dove into an article last week that dealt with the demise of the Florida State football program, which I think we can all agree on has slipped more than any program in the country over the last 6 or 7 years. We're talking about from a national championship and then down the rung to where it stands right now.
Logan, do you agree with that, Logan?
Yes.
Okay.
So what happened? Well, we covered 2013 and 14 and kind of the chinks in the armor and what was starting to show at that point. And we had a great discussion with the two of you and, of course, big game James Coleman. So let's go to 2015, following a season in which Florida State still won the ACC, still got to the college football playoff, lost to Oregon in the Rose Bowl, and then starts 2015, another season that culminated with a New Year's Six bowl game, although they lost to Houston in that one. So here's some things, Jason, I'll set you up first. Some points that I took from the article that dealt with, if you still look at recruiting from 2013 to 17, Florida State had the best class, even though Clemson was, that's the period in which they took over the conference. Florida State still had the best class in the ACC for those 5 consecutive seasons. But 2 issues: offensive line development and also finding that quarterback. DeAndre Francois certainly showed it in 2016, and unfortunately the 2017 game against Alabama, and he was never the same. But those 2 positions in particular were pointed out.
Yeah, and I feel like 2015, that was the first year after Jameis left to go to the NFL. And it was kind of a question moment. You bring in Everett Golston as the grad transfer from Notre Dame. You still had Sean McGuire, who was the perpetual backup his entire time in Tallahassee. Thank you, Hurricane Logan. Appreciate it.
Look at that.
That's nice. I mean, Hurricane Logan has literally given us $69 of his money. So thank you, Hurricane Logan. We appreciate it.
Insane.
We'll be at Florida State this year, so 10, 15.
Yeah, 10 plus 5 plus 52 is $67. $67 of his money. Thank you, Hurricane Logan. Appreciate it. 2015 was also the season where we talked a little bit about in 2014 how these games were close. A lot of them were comeback games. There was, having to come back in the second half against Louisville, second half against Florida, a last-second field goal to beat Boston College. 2015 was the interesting season because you could start to see Florida State not playing like you had seen them the last 3 seasons. They played like they were going through the motions against USF. They let Miami come back in the second half of that game and make that a lot closer, a 29-24 win by FSU. To me, the beginning of the end of this mini dynasty era was the Georgia Tech game. I don't mind us losing to Clemson because Clemson was a team that ended up playing for the national title. Houston in the bowl game was disappointing, but they were still a good team. That was a Georgia Tech team that finished 3-9. That was a Georgia Tech team we had no business losing to. That was, James and I have talked about it, that was like losing to Maryland back in 2004 for Florida State. You don't lose those games. That's the beginning of the end, and that's where you start to see, Everett Golston gets injured in that game. You talk about the offensive line play. That's where you start to see a lot of how are we losing to this Georgia Tech team? It's the same way this season when I say, how are we losing to a Louisville team with 1 win? How are we losing to a Pitt team? How are we losing to these teams we have no business losing to? How are we losing to Georgia Tech this season? It's where you start to see that downhill slide goes with that Georgia Tech game. And it was almost like you watched a Florida State team who should have been so livid with themselves after losing to a bad Georgia Tech team. And it was almost like, no big deal. We'll just come back. No, you should have been pissed off. You should have been as pissed off as the Florida State team was that lost to NC State in 1998, second ACC road loss. The desire wasn't there, and that's where you start to see it. And now the question comes, where did that desire get lost? Did it get lost after the blowout Rose Bowl loss to Oregon? Did it get lost after yawner games against USF, yawner game against Miami, a yawner game against Boston College on a Friday night in Chestnut Hill back in September? Logan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much detailed most of it. The biggest thing was that Georgia Tech game. Every fan that was there will tell you that's probably one of the worst games they've been to just because of, that killed the season for them. I think a lot of the guys were already, after the 2014 season, felt pretty crappy after the loss to Oregon and losing that, not having the chance to play for a consecutive national championship. And then you jump into 2015, you lose to Georgia Tech like that. And then not only do you lose to Georgia Tech, you lose to Clemson, which is, like Jason said, ended up going to the national championship that year, but you finish off the season too, losing to Houston, which no FSU fan had any expectation of that happening. They felt pretty good about it. But, Florida State had so much talent on that team. Dalvin Cook was just a sophomore. That was a time where he was just getting going. He saved Florida State in a lot of these games. You had Auden Tate as a true freshman. Trying to think of a few other guys that were in there. Derwin James came in as a true freshman. So you had talent around everywhere. You still had Jalen Ramsey too as a junior. So a lot of things were really, really just unexpected of a season. But it really did start with that Georgia Tech. And, if Roberto Aguayo could tackle, then Florida State might have been saved in that area,
We are blaming the kicker. I mean, I get what we do. I understand. We have issues with our kickers. But I feel like if you look at it over, let's say, the last 7 seasons, from 2014 to 2020, 2014, the loss was to an Oregon team that played for a national title. 2015, we talked about, was Clemson, played for a national title. Houston, it was in a bowl game. Houston was a good team. 2016 was Louisville, who, Lamar Jackson goes on to win the Heisman Trophy. We lose to Clemson, who ends up winning the national title. And our other else was North Carolina, another bowl team. I feel like if you're going to lose games, I don't mind losing to decent teams. I don't mind. It sucks getting blown out by Clemson 59-10 in 2018, but that was a very good team. You understand where it's coming from. It sucked being in that stadium watching us lose 52-10 to Miami. This was a Miami team that was in ACC championship game contention and went to a decent bowl game. That Georgia Tech team in 2015 was god-awful, just like this year in 2020. Those 2 Georgia Tech losses are the worst out of the group because there's no reason Florida State should have lost to Georgia Tech. No reason. Especially against that damn option in 2015. I hate that damn option offense. Horrible.
Annoying.
Mark, you just got called delusional.
I was called delusional. Don't I rank teams? Yes, I do. I didn't say I didn't rank teams. I said I don't trust other people's rankings. That's what I said. All right. So, yeah, losing to a 3-9 team. And to Logan's point, if you don't have a fluke play against you, then you don't lose. But to Jason's point, you should be up by 21 anyway. You should not be messing around with a bad football team. I think that was an aberration of a year for Georgia Tech, though, because they were good the year before. They went to the Orange Bowl, won the Orange Bowl the year before, and they were better the next year. But, yes, they were a 3-9 football team. So we go from there. And that Houston game, I remember that one. Cosentino played that game, correct?
Golston wasn't a quarterback. I think McGuire was injured. Yeah, J.J. Cosentino. Yeah, McGuire broke his foot or broke his ankle, I believe. Logan, was that game?
Which game?
Sorry. Logan game. Chick-fil-A moves. Hold on. You can place.
Say that again one more time.
I said
Peach Bowl game.
Yeah, you can place your Chick-fil-A.
Yep. And Constantino had to come in and do his thing, or whatever it was.
There's no excuse for losing, but it felt like it was one of those games where they didn't want to be there. And Houston was extremely fired up, of course, to play in the New Year's Six at Oliver. They had a really good team.
But would you say, but honestly, Mark, though, on the flip side of that, this was a Florida State team that 2 seasons before had won a national title with what I think was the best college football team, but I think even critics would say was a top 5 college football team. There's no reason we should have lost to Houston in that game. Houston was a good team, but there's no reason we should have lost to that team.
Oh, if I remember, you were a 2-touchdown favorite.
No, I remember. Yeah, I lost. Yeah. Thanks, appreciate it.
So if we move on to more points, while that was all going on the field, meanwhile, Jimbo Fisher's supposedly fighting with administration over money to pay assistant coaches. He has a lot of projects he would like to push. He wants facilities upgraded. He's not getting the kind of money and support that he's looking for there. Monk Bonasort. confidant of Jimbo Fisher's, unfortunately passed away, became extremely ill. Brain tumor, brain cancer. Yeah. And he passes away. And so Jimbo Fisher has a very sick child, marital issues. There's a lot going on off the field as well.
Yeah, 2016 was an interesting year. And you see like how in the opener against Ole Miss is up 28-6. It's like they're going to annihilate us. In Orlando in the opener, DeAndre Francois in his hometown comes back and wins that game. 2016 was another season where you've got, like, for example, North Carolina, that was a 2-point loss. Clemson was a 3-point loss. Louisville was a 43-point loss. But that's a different issue. So you have those close losses, but you also have those close wins. Miami was a 1-point victory thanks to a missed extra point. NC State was a 4-point victory thanks to a second-half comeback. It was kind of a season where, yes, on the surface, it finished 10-3, another 10-win season, but it was the 5th straight season of double-digit wins, but it could have easily gone the other way. And that's where I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I said it. It was a season that we were lucky to be at that point. I feel like that was the beginning of the end, but because of those 10 wins, because of pulling it out against NC State, pulling it out against Miami, pulling it out against Michigan in the Orange Bowl, those kind of cover up the fact that season was not as good as the 10-3 record indicates.
Yeah, Florida State was extremely, extremely talented too on their roster. You still bring back once again Dalvin Cook as a junior, his last season at FSU. He wins an Orange Bowl MVP, absolutely goes off. You have DeAndre Francois, and then you still bring back another season, a true sophomore of Derwin James. There's young talent coming in too. You've got senior like Freddie Stevenson. You've got DeMarcus Christmas, Derek Nottie, who we know is having a great career in the NFL. So the talent was everywhere. DeMarcus Walker. It was stacked, but it just couldn't hang with some tough competition. Definitely when it came down to the Clemson game, losing by a field goal there, 3 points. And then you've got the loss to North Carolina, which I was there for that one. Got to be there for that. Got to see the kicker do his little trot in.
Well, I just want to show Ronan I don't live in a trailer park. I live in an actual apartment. You may be too drunk in Ireland to realize that, but this is an apartment. It's not a trailer park team. So yeah, live in an apartment.
I feel like he's fighting with somebody else, Jason, in the chat. By the way,
I don't know. I came hard at him earlier. So I didn't know how it was going with that. I do have a question for you. The 2016 team, and Mark, you watched those teams. You watched a lot, so you can jump in on this as well. I feel like the biggest problem on that, we've talked about the flaws in the offensive line, the other issues, wide receiver, whatnot. Yeah, Dalvin Cook saved that season. Dalvin Cook single-handedly won the game against USF. Single-handedly won the game against Miami. Won the game against NC State, won the game against Michigan. So there's four wins right there. I feel like the defense was the problem that season because the defense goes out, gives up a 37 points to a North Carolina team that was not, as good as a Sam Howell type North Carolina team they have now. You're giving up 35 points to USF in the final season of Willie Taggart there. You're giving up 63 to Louisville, who Louisville was good. Yes, Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy. You shouldn't be giving up 63 points to anybody. So I feel like defense was more of a problem with that. Do you think that was more of a defensive letdown, or do you think that was everyone catching up to FSU?
I think we also saw the fall of the offensive line just kind of being atrocious. You're letting DeAndre Francois get obliterated in most games and practically have concussions by the second quarter. And most, I think there was flaws with that. And like you said, if Dalvin Cook has to carry it, that's practically him doing his own thing. The defense could have played better, and I'm sure majority of these games I have to go back and look, but there was just too much talent overall, and that's got to go to coaching too. There's too much talent. Charles Kelly, I believe that was Third and Kelly when that became famous. Should have made T-shirts off of it and made hundreds of thousands of dollars. Third and Kelly was continuously every week, and that's what shot Florida State's defensive play down quite a bit. But you got DeMarcus Walker, who I think is going to stay in the league for some time. Like I said, Derek Nottie, who has a Super Bowl ring already. DeMarcus Christmas. Florida State's defensive line unit was, I think, really stacked. You still have Jacob Pugh to Nate Andrews as a true senior. I think that's about Most I might be missing someone else defensively, but you had the talent. It just it just wasn't turning into anything great.
I remember watching a ton of these games. Yeah, the Louisville game was just an embarrassment on national TV. I think Game Day was there.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was a noon game. And for as good as Lamar Jackson was, that Louisville team, they lost 3 consecutive games late in the season and only scored 9 points against LSU. So
And that's the reason we ended up in the Orange Bowl, because we were ranked ahead of them in the playoff rankings, and that's why we ended up in the Orange Bowl. So thank you to Louisville for losing to Houston and Kentucky. Appreciate it.
I remember watching that North Carolina game. The Miami game, was that the missed extra point or the blocked extra point game, 20-19?
Block at the lock.
Played well against a Clemson team that, of course, went on and played in the national championship game, won the national championship, 37-34. Great game there. The Michigan game, you know, on the surface, yeah, like you pointed out, Jason, to the typical college football fan, it looked like, hey, this is a good Florida State team. This is a 10-3 team. They just won the Orange Bowl, finished number 8 in the country. But yeah, if you look below the surface, like the Ole Miss game, that was a national TV, Labor Day night game in which Ole Miss just jumped out like 28-10, had a huge lead. That Ole Miss team was coming off 2 great seasons that could be explained later because of recruiting violations. But that particular Ole Miss team then turned out to not be that good. They only won 5 games. So yeah, it was a pretty capable schedule though that they had to face. But yeah, the defense really and the offensive line, DeAndre Francois, as I'll use Jason Logan's term, got obliterated.
Oh, the Miami game, he got murdered. Essentially, Miami was just killing him, and you even had Miami people in the press box for that game. You have Miami fans who gained a lot of respect for him because of the fact that he was actually alive.
Yep. Yeah, no, a lot of national analysts. I know Kirk Herbstreit was in love with DeAndre and how well he was able to get back and play, and I give it to him too. High respect for what DeAndre Francois had to go through, because that was just the end of it all for our Florida State's offensive line play, because it was absolutely atrocious and it was pathetic. And that goes to where Jimbo wasn't doing a right job getting his staff right with Trickett not taking care of business and recruiting better, because, you know, you have a talented quarterback there. I think if you give him a better offensive line and you have Dalvin Cook back there, that offense should be ridiculous. You still have Auden Tate, who's young. You have other young ones that are on the team too. Surrounded DeAndre, you got Bobo Wilson, Travis Rudolph, Nooney Murray, like I said already, Auden Tate. But this is also the time where we're seeing guys that didn't really develop or stay on Florida State's roster much longer. Devontae Phillips, a former 5-star wide receiver, thought things would go better for him. And there's a whole other amount of names that we could spend 30 minutes on. But this is just the kind of beginning of the end, they say.
Yeah.
Now, I want to address that because Wayne told them we had another, the Rod Farva asked who I think the ideal coach would be. So I feel like I should clarify the lies that Logan has spread. So let's clarify. Let's correct Logan, as I do every single week here with Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I do not hate Mike Norvell. I have never hated Mike Norvell. I don't know Mike Norvell personally, so you can't hate somebody that you do not know. Where my dislike of this hire came from is that Mike Norvell is not a coach you fire Willie Taggart with 3 games left in the regular season and then wait 5 weeks to hire this man. And you could have gotten if you had fired. Thank you to Rod Farva for asking that question. This is one where you could have kept Willie Taggart on. I do believe even with Willie Taggart as head coach, I think they beat Boston College. I think they beat Alabama State, and they get those 6 wins to become bowl eligible. After that Florida game, you can let him go, and then I still would not have agreed with it, but then the argument would have been you finished his 2 seasons, he went through his 2 complete seasons, and you at least let him finish the season. Guess what? You still could have hired Mike Norvell if that's who you wanted. If that's who you truly believe is going to be the best coach for this program, that's fine. That's not a 5-week hire. That's somebody you get if you're going to get Bob Stoops. If you're going to get, I know it's a name that's going to make some people in the FSU family throw up, but Mark Richt, after he had left Miami and taken a year off, he was still a good coach. Let's be honest. He was a good coach. These are the kind of coaches that you're willing to fire coach at the end of the regular season and then come back. Mike Norvell is a 1 week hire. He's not somebody. So that's my whole issue with the hiring of Mike Norvell, number one. Number two, when you start off laying an egg against Georgia Tech, I don't have much confidence the rest of the way. And I don't have a problem with us being 3-6, really. I have a problem with the way we look 3-6. If we were 3-6 this season and lost the Georgia Tech game by 3 points, the Miami game by 3 points, the Notre Dame game by 3 points, Louisville, Pitt, and NC State, if we lost all those by a touchdown or less, I could accept it a little bit better because we would have played like a decent team. Getting annihilated by 32 points to a bad Louisville team. I was in the game here talk as Pitt is sitting here talking smack to us. I was at that game when Pitt beat us by 24 points. You don't lose to Pitt by 24 points. You don't lose to Louisville by 32 points. That's the problem, is that right now this is not a team that's playing better than what we had before. If you're telling me is the 2020 team better than the 2019 team, no, I think it was a serious drop down.